my experience, at least onboarding customers that have a successful affiliate program, usually it's that the traditional affiliates that used to drive a lot of signups were like coupon sites and discount sites and stuff like that would basically drive a lot of traffic. I think those are diminishing over time. The type of affiliates that are actually driving signups and customers are not traditional affiliates at all. So we tried paid ads, couldn't really scale as much. I tried cold outbound, not really a fit for us, the amount of resources that would take. SEO has been the main driver. I think one thing was probably our positioning. So we weren't quite clear on what we were at the time, because I always had this worry that like average affiliate recruitment and link building was a very small market. So for us to be able to build a decent company, we had to cater to a larger audience.
In today's episode, my guest is Farzad Rashidi. Farzad is the co-founder and lead innovator at Respona, and the story of Respona is a bit different than all the other startups and founders I had on my podcast so far. It is built from within a corporate, Visme to be precise, an 8-figure business with 20 million users. Visme is also where Farzad started his career while still being in college in 2017. It was the first marketing hire, and he built Respona to help with their outreach, which worked really well as they're receiving around 2 million visitors each month. In today's episode, we're going to talk about how have they been able to achieve these results and how have they been able to build a startup within a corporate. So welcome to the show, Farzad.
Thank you so much for having me, Joran. It's a pleasure.
Nice. Let's dive right in, get to know you and get to know Respona. Let's start with the latter. When did Respona get started?
Yeah, to give you a little backstory there. So for folks who haven't heard of Visme, it's a platform folks can create presentations, infographics and whatnot. A lot of people have heard of Canva. The way I would put it simply is that it's a little bit more upmarket version of that. But back in 2013, they actually started around the same time. So the founder, Payman, actually took a bootstrap route, and Canva went and raised hundreds of millions of dollars, and hence the difference now. So you can see the trajectory. But my involvement with Visme goes back in the day when I was in college and I actually cold email Payman, the founder, and I'd come across their product, really liked it. So I was like, hey, you guys need help with marketing, and didn't have anybody then. It was like a team of a few engineers that just spin up a product. So I joined there. It was quite a challenging product to market because they still to this day have a very affordable price tag. So there was like $20 a month or something at the time. So it wasn't a type of cold sales average type that you could go door to door, start selling. The economics wouldn't make any sense. And also we tried paid ads, and every time we ever tried to scale it, never scaled. It was quite cheap at the time, even though we didn't know it then. Cost per clicks were like $1, and we're like, oh my God, it's so expensive. We envy those days now. But as far as the scale aspect was not there, because the returns were quite diminishing. So you hit an ad that was working, you double the budget, conversions don't double. So essentially I hit a wall there, but it was good to get some initial customers in. So to build that acquisition engine and to help us acquire customers for the long run, we landed on SEO because we were a bootstrap company, didn't have a big budget. So we were like, okay, let's start writing some content. And guess what happened?
You made...
Absolutely not. It was crickets. For months, we started writing content, built landing pages, invest all this time and resources, and there was nothing that was going on. So what we eventually ended up figuring out was that a lot of these search engines, Google, the main one, the way they work is that they essentially put a lot of emphasis on how popular the site is. And the way they measure credibility and popularity is in terms of how many other sites in your space are talking about you, mentioning you. And those are essentially what we call links or backlinks at the time. And now we call them more so in terms of getting product placements. Now, those type of links were easier said than done to get. So when it comes to getting other people to do something for you, is something that's entirely out of your control. So we started reaching out to folks, duct taping a bunch of tools manually that were built initially like for sales teams. And it started trickling, like the traffic started trickling in. We started getting some results, and the rest was just history. And then we decided to essentially build a little platform to help our team get a bit more efficient, when it came to outreach, and that was the genesis of Respona.
Nice. And we're gonna dive deeper into like all the stages you guys went through, but to get to know a little bit like where you guys are right now, can you share anything regarding your revenue, number of customers?
Yeah, Respona, we haven't disclosed revenue just yet, but we're a team of, I would say, 7 or 8 team members, and it's bootstrap profitable, so that's good. And we're growing, doubling it year over year. On the Visme side, my co-founder is the founder of Visme. He has mentioned that Visme is doing 8 figures in ARR, so I feel confident that he wouldn't mind me sharing that on the podcast. So they're north of 10 million ARR. And yeah, both are bootstrap operations, both are profitable.
And when you look at the revenue of Respona, is it all SaaS or is there also a service component to it?
It's all SaaS. We don't do any services.
Yeah. You already explained like what Respona does or where it came from. If you would explain what it does today, how would you do?
Yeah, so essentially what Respona does is helping you get the word out about your product. So say, for example, you have a tool like Redditus, and what do? You guys have an affiliate marketing platform. Nobody knows what it is or who you guys are. So you start writing some content on your blog, but in order to establish yourself as a credible resource, there's a few different types of outreach that you want to do to get the product out. One is getting yourself on listicles. So, hey, any posts that have been published on, hey, what are some of the best affiliate marketing tools, etc. Anybody who's mentioning, talking about your competitors, anybody who's written a review on impact, for example, would be a potential candidate for you guys to reach out to. Essentially putting yourself in positions where customers who are looking for a tool like yours will find you. And essentially that, as a byproduct, has an impact on your domain authority, because the more websites talk about you and feature you, the more it sends a signal to this search engine. So Respona is a platform that helps you identify these opportunities at scale and keep a tab on them, gets you the contact info of the right people, and also helps you contact them in a personalized manner to do these type of processes at scale and with very minimal time.
Yeah, and I can say that we're actually using Respona ourselves also to find and discover affiliates for some of our clients. It's really nice that you can automate almost the entire flow. You just put in the people you are, the URLs you want to contact, they would find the context, and from there you can run a sequence on it, which is indeed like super nice because you don't have to keep an eye on it like every day. Cool. I guess that's a promo. Let's talk about Farzad quickly. How old are you?
I'm 26. I was actually having a debate with my mother whether I'm 26 or 27 today. We had landed on 26.
Nice. And you started at Visme when still in college. Is this your first startup then?
Yes. Respona is the first. Actually, we started working on Respona my last year of college, starting after I basically started dedicating myself full-time to.
Yeah. And you're a co-founder of Respona. Like, have you always wanted to be an entrepreneur?
Yeah, so that's an excellent question. I've never been asked that before on a podcast. But yes, I always wanted to start my own business. And I think that probably the roots are in my childhood. My dad is a pharmacist, and pharmacists in my country, the way they work is that they run their own business. I'm Iranian originally. And since I was very young, saw them, my mom and my dad, kind of starting their own businesses and moving from one city to another. So I always thought that's how jobs worked. I just thought that this is the way that you make money, is by starting a business. I didn't know anything else existed. So that was rooted in me back in the day since I was a child.
Nice. When we look at Respona, is there an end goal defined?
That's an excellent question too. Yeah, so many great questions, Joran. Yeah, so we've thought about different ways. At the end of the day, what we're looking to do is add the most value to our customers. And so whether that be continuing to grow Respona using the Visme playbook, essentially, to keep growing it profitably, bootstrap, and just keep reinvesting the company, or whether that be down the line, partner with another company that already has all of our customers and to plug it into their ecosystem. We're open to that. I think we're probably still a couple of years away from what that would make sense. At the moment, what we're putting our entire focus on is just building the best class product and delighting our customers. So that's in the hindsight, but I would say in the future, but not something that I would say is, and we're not looking to do anything different than we are today in the foreseeable future.
Yeah, gotcha. I think it's a really nice mission you have, right? But it doesn't always keep you motivated day to day. What keeps Farzad motivated?
When I talk to my customers, and I'm quite involved with the sales and with the onboarding and the customer success still. And when I see, we just did a case study with the agency, and they're like, "Oh, wish we found you guys years ago." And so we didn't exist back then, but thank you. That warms my heart because they were doing all this type of work manually, deductive and different things. Now, like it completely changed like the way they do. And you guys are doing this for one or a few brands, like an agency is doing this for dozens, if not hundreds of customers. So it saves them a ton of time. So knowing that it's actually making an impact, people are using it and getting value from it, enough motivation for us to keep going. So I would say just having happy customers really is what keeps us going. And it wasn't always the case when we started as the SaaS. It wasn't always sunshine and rainbows. We had bugs, issues, things would break down and go down. And we had customers unhappy with us because they put their trust in us. We were in beta still back in the day. Fortunately, now we have a enterprise grade, like fully stable solution. Back in the day, it wasn't always like this. But having reached a step where we feel very confident that a large enterprise company or larger agency, they could trust their whole business and outreach team to run all through outreach.
Nice. That's what I always love about bootstrap companies. They take the motivation out of the clients and the clients getting value out of their tool. We already know, I guess, when Respona got started, ads were too expensive. You were trying things out with outbound. When you were building the early version of the SaaS, did you already know from the beginning it was going to be such a success?
Absolutely not, no. Because the whole point of building Respona was, hey, we're going to build this for ourselves because we need it. And we looked at different solutions were in the market. And there's a lot of sales tech tools, like they're built for outbound for sales. And they were great for that purpose, but nothing really that was worth their salt was built specifically for this type of marketing outbound outreach. So the product was just built for ourselves. And we're like, hey, we get other people to pay for it, then great. It's cherry on top of Sunday. So we put it out in the market. We started getting some beta customers and they started paying us. And we're like, hey, this actually has some value in it. And they found a use in it. I'm sure the market must be large enough. So we started investing more and built it. And it came out of surprise at the beginning, but I would say we weren't really keeping our hopes up too much from the get-go. We're reserved when it comes to our projections. We were like, hey, if nobody needed it, we need it. We're going to be our own customer.
Yeah. I think that's a really good place to start because you're always the most critical as well. And you want to get the most out of it. You want to automate your entire work. So I think it's really nice that you already had at least one client who was using it heavily, which was yourself.
Yep, exactly.
At what time did it become bigger than Visme? Because in the end, you started to use it for yourself. Then at one point you think, okay, can we charge for it? Are people willing to pay for it? Tell me about that moment. Like what happened where you guys were like, hey, this is actually a lot more than just a tool for ourselves.
Yeah, when I had graduated from college and started working full time, it was quite clear we had some paying customers and Respona showed really good potential. And the product was working well for our team. They were very happy with it. So we knew that we could get this far, but obviously it was never going to work out as a side project. We needed at least one person on top of things. So I was director of marketing at Visme at the time. So we essentially hired a replacement for myself, trained that person, put him in charge. And I started basically taking over and taking Respona more seriously back in 2019. That's when we actually released our beta version and started getting our paying customers the same year. And then starting 2020, that's when we were all in essentially, myself and my little team that essentially spun off and started working on it full time.
Yeah. And you did it under the umbrella of Visme, right? There's a lot of assumptions, I guess, I would say, or at least on my side, building a startup within a corporate, like you might have the funding, right? Like it's bootstrap, of course, but you have at least the back of a bigger company. But tell me a little bit, like what are the biggest benefits, but also the biggest challenges of building a startup within, let's call it a corporate?
Yeah. So there's pros and cons, just like anything. And it is quite unusual to do this. So again, the way I convinced the founder of Visme to invest in this was for Visme. And hey, we need this. Let's build it and see if this got legs to it later on. And the pro is that, which is probably one of the biggest worries of any entrepreneur that's bootstraps, I never worried about making payroll. There's a period of time, obviously, as any bootstrap company, you are going to burn cash at some point. At the very beginning, there's server costs and you have engineers, you have to. So if you have raised any amount of money, or even if you're self-funding, it's a finite amount of resource. But having been backed by a profitable growing company gives you that sense of peace of mind that, hey, obviously it has to be within reason. We can't just go out there and start throwing money out, but our team's taken care of, like our basics are taken care of. And even though we haven't raised traditional VC, so it's not like we're going to raise money and then spend it and then be at the mercy of investors to raise our next round. And if they don't, then we die. It was never the case. So essentially still gave us like that comfort of having some funding and also giving the same flexibility as being bootstrapped, where we don't have a board, like we don't have formal structure, so that we could essentially do what we needed to do. Obviously, some downside to that. One is expectations. When you're backed by another company in that they're investing in you to show ROI and they invested in you. So you have to make sure that, because when it's your own business, you're like, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out, and go do other things. But you don't have that luxury when other people have trusted you with their livelihood and also resources. So I think aside from that, I've been very fortunate. So my partner, Paymon, has been extremely supportive and he's also been quite hands-off when it comes to operations. So I've had the luxury of being able to make our own decisions without having any bottlenecks or essentially meddling in the day-to-day. Obviously, we go to him for advice and we make the big decisions together when it comes to the day-to-day. It's been so we maintain our speed and pace to market by being able to make decisions, keep the team small, and move forward quickly.
And was it also the case at the beginning where you already had like your own little team, which was fully on Respona, and they didn't have to worry about, I guess, their, I don't know how they call it, like full-time job or like their main responsibilities at Visme? Like at one point, did they have to juggle?
At the beginning, I did. It was just me, though. The other team we just had one engineer. So while we were at Visme, and we found that just sharing engineers is never a good idea. They would not be optimal when it comes to their productivity. So we actually had a dedicated person to Respona hired for Respona's purposes, always. But then when I came and joined full-time, then we started adding headcount. So we started hiring another engineer and then started contracting designers and started investing more, because then I was on top of things full-time. But we never really shared the resources in a way that we had used Visme employees and now we had to go hire on new team members. It was always separate teams.
Yeah, I think that makes sense, because then you can hire the people you want and then you don't have to worry about the people which are already in, which might not even like the project, and you're kind of forcing them to do something they don't like.
Are you struggling to find people and companies which have access to your ideal customer profile? At Redditors, we just launched the second side of the marketplace, which allows you to search, filter, and contact B2B SaaS affiliates which have access to the audience you're looking for. We do this by leveraging first-party data sources. Want to learn more? Go to getredditors.com.
Let's talk about, hopefully you can look back at it as a fun thing, rock bottom moments. Like it's always like in hindsight, it's easier to talk about them. Everybody hits them at one point, right? Either financially or personally. Can you talk about a rock bottom moment for yourself and how did you get yourself out of it?
Yeah. I would say the most difficult time with the company where we thought that like I was doubting, it was like 50-50 whether we were going to make it, was when we came out of beta. We had initially pieced the software together with duct tape. Like our beta version was not designed to be a commercial product, it was supposed to be an internal tool. So it's ugly looking, it was not user friendly, and also from an infrastructure perspective and to tech specs, like it was not something that you would build on. It had to be rewritten. So once we had our beta out and then we started getting some customers, we're like, hey, this is great, it's showing promise. And then we hired more engineers and I was on it full time. So we actually started hiring a professional designer and then we started designing that whole thing and then from the ground up and then built the whole thing. But by the time but it was a completely separate product. Like our 1.0 version was like a separate infrastructure, separate product, different technology even. But then we had this challenge of having customers switch. So we already had like our first 10 customers and all that during the beta. And then we had also lower tier plans. So there were quite a few that we actually had, I think, quite a few customers, probably a few dozen customers. The challenge was switching them over from the beta to the 1.0. So we built like a migration tool that would migrate, because when you have campaigns running at the same time, all these keys and stuff are already in the database. So being able to migrate that wasn't that easy. especially that we made the dumb mistake of doing that migration the day before our lead engineer was going to go on a sailing trip for 7 days with no internet access. Don't ask me why. That was a dumb mistake. Like looking back in retrospect, I'm like, why? This made absolutely no sense. Because when you talk to engineers, they're like, oh, it's fine. We just press button, it migrates, and it's good to go. So I can do that before I go, so we don't have to delay it any longer, because we had to push it back a few times. So long story short, we switched and all hell broke loose. Essentially, nothing was working the way it should. Our customers were unhappy with us. Our support was blowing up. Our lead engineer was on a boat somewhere with no internet access. We had the one other engineer we had, senior engineer. And actually, we had 3 engineers, but there were 2 front ends and 1 back end left. And most of the issues were on the back end. So there were times that I would just have to stop what I was doing at the office. And it was like freezing cold in the winter. So I would just walk downstairs and just go walk, like took a few laps around the building just so I can clear my head and then come back up, because I couldn't take it anymore. It's like the amount of negativity that we had to deal with. And that went on for a few weeks until we patched things up, and then our other engineer came back. And then because of the amount of pressure we put on our guys, like they were not motivated as well as they were before, because they were like, oh, this sucks, like our customers unhappy, getting the team morale back up. And anyway, I take full responsibility for it. It could have all been avoided by pushing. Like people always say, launch and push and release. And I get it. There's a balance though. Sometimes doing it too soon is going to backfire, and that definitely did. So yeah, fun stuff.
Lesson here, launch fast, migrate slow.
Exactly right.
Nice. I think it's definitely something a lot of companies go through, where they have the first version, in the end they rebuild things, and you want to go fast, but if you don't do things properly, then you can end up in your situation.
Exactly.
Like real practical. For example, did all your clients have an annual plan? Did you have a lot of churn during that period?
Yeah, we definitely had some churn, but it wasn't as bad. It might have been more catastrophic in our heads than it actually was. Obviously, as I'm sure as a founder, you understand this, that you're like, nothing's going well, nothing's working well, but it's not always zeros and ones. We definitely had customers that were upset and then eventually moved away. The vast majority of our customers stuck around, and they understood because we had sold them a beta product. They knew already that this was in beta. It wasn't like we were hiding it. We had a beta tag on our logo, like in the product, all over the place. So it was quite clear to them, and the fact that they had signed up, that they knew that there was going to be some bottlenecks to work through. But again, it was a Band-Aid we had to rip up at some point. So it was going to be bad, but we essentially got through it, and then the rest is history.
Nice. So the migration is definitely one good thing you guys have done to get to where you are today. Are there any other big things you guys have done to grow where Respona is today? So
nothing that I would say was just being a bootstrap company. The things that we do have never been like something that's extraordinary that you would say, oh, no, we tried everything that's within conventional wisdom of a SaaS founder. So we tried paid ads, couldn't really scale as much. Tried cold outbound, not really a fit for us, the amount of resources that would take. SEO has been the main driver. We had to change our content strategy, tweak it, obviously, because so my initial mistake was that I was using the Visme playbook. So I was like, oh, let's cast the white net, because Visme, anybody can use it. Everyone needs to make presentations. It's not the case with Respona. It's a very small subset of our audience. It's just B2B SaaS companies and agencies that work and they use it. So changing that approach to start targeting more bottom of the funnel, longer tail targeted keywords, so that would reduce our traffic, but leads went up. Nothing extraordinary that I'd be like, oh, we did this and then we snapped our fingers and then bam, customers started flooding in. No, it was a slow and painful and iterative process of figuring out go-to-market. One of the best things that happened to us that has been driving a lot of customers to us is getting ourselves listed in places where our customers are looking for it. So when you want to come across a tool like Respona, there's a few channels. You are like, hey, I want to grow my affiliate program, or I want to recruit affiliates, or I want to build backlinks, increase my traffic. And yes, you can build your own content pieces catered to that, but a lot of times what's a lot easier is to get yourself mentioned on pieces that have already been getting rankings and traffic and getting your product listed there. Like we got listed by like Backlinko's blog and SEMrush, and they all listed us in like their best tools for link building. So that's how a lot of our customers come across us during the research process. And also it helps our own landing pages to go up. So if you look up like link building software, etc., like that, Respona is usually the top 3. Again, all of this took time. It wasn't something that happened overnight. But also those are harder to beat as a competitor. So it's not something that you would, in a way, emote as well. Because anybody can just run ads or do outbound and stuff like that. But building some of those acquisition channels make it harder also for new market entrants to gain any traction.
Yeah. So you pick the slow and compounding channels. It takes time to grow it, but once it's going, it will continue to basically drive traffic for you guys.
Exactly.
Sign-ups, paid clients. And getting yourself listed in relevant articles, like I probably won't have to ask, but you have used Respona for it most likely.
Oh, yes. We're a big power user of Respona ourselves. So like I'll go on podcasts once a week like this. So we use Respona to find some podcast opportunities. Obviously, we monitor mentions of all of our competitors all over the web. So yeah, we use our product quite extensively.
Nice. We already talked about your biggest failure, like migrate before the lead developer goes on holiday. Is there anything you regret you didn't do, like in this time now as a co-founder?
That's an excellent question. I think one thing was probably our positioning. So we weren't quite clear on what we were at the time, because I always had this worry that like average affiliate recruitment and link building was a very small market. So for us to be able to build a decent company, we had to cater to a larger audience. Big mistake. Should have definitely narrowed it down from the very get-go. Again, we eventually figured that out and narrowed things down, but we were trying to be anything for everyone, and that usually never works out, especially as a bootstrap company that you have limited resources and you race against time. So that is definitely something that I regret. It's like getting our positioning clear from the get-go, because we knew really what we were. It wasn't like we were trying to figure that out. We were just trying to sell it to other segments of the market that were just not going to be as successful as our ICP.
Yeah. And you narrowed it back down. And at one point, did you open it wider again, or are you still really narrow on?
So quite narrow. We opened it up just a little bit because there are some tangent use cases for Respona. Like, for example, booking podcast interviews could consider it link building. It's not really affiliate recruitment, or recruiting affiliates versus link building. The same process, same average tactic, different use cases, but it's usually done within the same company. If you are a SaaS company and you have an affiliate program, most likely you also have a blog and writing content, you want to build links, and most likely you want to get your founder on podcasts as well. Those are within the same ICP. Still doesn't really change the type of companies that we cater to.
Yeah, makes sense. When we look at Respona, we now have all these new technologies, AI, machine learning. They're not that new anymore nowadays. Like, how do you guys leverage it within Respona?
Yeah, so I think it's definitely something that is going to grow in prominence. I'm a big AI optimist. I think it's a little overused in marketing material. I think AI is more of a back-end technology. You can't just slap it all over the product and just expect people to care. So customers want to get things done. So we use it quite extensively on the back end of Respona. So for example, a big part of that has to do with email personalization. Like, for example, you want to reach a podcast, and what Respona does is that it pulls the latest episode of the podcast, listens to it, transcribes it. Based on what they've talked about in the episode, would generate like a personalized icebreaker based on what they've talked about in the episode. So it improves email deliverability, gives you up to double the reply rates. So yeah, so there's what we call like AI-powered fields where you can give it custom instructions and have it do all sorts of cool things. And then we got a bunch of other things in the works, obviously, that we use it as needed. So we usually take a feature that we want to get done, and we're like, hey, our customers want to do X. Now we use whatever technology is necessary to make it work. We're not necessarily taking the technology. We're like, okay, let's go see where we can fit generative AI in our app. That's usually not how we look at it.
Yeah, it has to drive value in the
exactly.
Yeah. That's what I love to hear. Like you don't add it at the label. It's actually driving value for the clients. Gonna ask a question maybe mostly for our clients. You can use Respona also to recruit affiliates, right? So when you look at B2B SaaS companies, like how would you recruit affiliates for a SaaS? And you can take the Respona example, of course, or the Respona approach.
Yeah. So again, you're the expert in affiliate marketing. Correct me if I'm wrong, but my experience, at least onboarding customers that have a successful affiliate program, usually it's that the traditional affiliates that used to drive a lot of signups were like coupon sites and discount sites and stuff like that would basically drive a lot of traffic. I think those are diminishing over time. The type of affiliates that are actually driving signups and customers are not traditional affiliates at all. They don't even consider themselves affiliate marketers. There are other companies with overlapping audience, or there are other websites that are in your space that have some other source of monetization. So, for example, take Respona and Redditus as an example. Like Redditus is the perfect affiliate marketer for Respona. Why? Because Redditus has all of our target ICPs, right? So B2B SaaS, that's our bread and butter. And the more your customers are recruiting affiliates and improving their affiliate program, the more Redditus wins. So it makes it a perfect synergy between our companies so that if any Redditus customers, so the more customers you send us, the better off you are. And yes, you might get a kickback or not. Main reason why you're doing this is because that you're essentially helping your customers be more successful. That's the reason why. Or the same goes for us. Like we want our customers who don't have an affiliate program have some sort of an affiliate program built out, because that creates a really nice incentive structure. So now that when you're reaching out to another prospect and you want to work together, you're not asking them to do it out of the goodness of their heart. You can actually attract the conversions and the referrals and then have them actually be compensated for it. So these type of partnerships are the ones that really move the needle. And so when it comes to Respona, usually the way you could identify these opportunities is one, obviously you start with the low-hanging fruit of listicles, competitor mentions. You could also, if you want to get a little bit more nerdy, we can identify your competitors' top affiliates. So any affiliate program has a unique link structure. You can easily find them and you can reach out to them if they're promoting products that are similar to yours, not even direct competitors. You could see if they'd be interested in directing traffic to you. And usually what happens is you get a sense for it. So you try a bunch of different strategies and one or two of them are going to stick and they're going to work really well. So just double down on them and eliminate the strategies that don't work. So there's no one size fit all strategy that I've found that works for every company, but usually once they try a handful of these strategies, they tend to find one or two that work really well for them.
Yeah. And it's the same with any general need you use. Try them, test it, see what works, and then go from there. I definitely agree with the beginning you said, as in like leverage companies who refer you where they can get value out of your tool or where people think they can get value out of your tool. Because we have been referring Respona quite a bit because we know if companies are going to use you guys, then we know they're going to be more successful with their affiliate program, which is like perfect for us, perfect for you guys, and perfect for the clients. So it's a real true win where they're going to get value out of the tool. Nice. Let's dive a bit to the end. Real practical questions. What kind of advice would you give another SaaS founder who's just starting out and growing to 10K monthly recurring revenue?
I would say that one of the things that helped us really well at the very beginning was me being the person in charge of sales and onboarding. So having that one-on-one approach of seeing the prospects, seeing which one of them saw the value, signed up, and then what would happen after the sale. So what would happen after the close? How would they use the system? And then what sort of problems they would solve. So all of that info that I gathered just talking to customers and me being the main person doing the sales and the customer success role helped us, one, shape our marketing strategy, figuring out, because it's one of the first questions you ask them, how did you hear about us? And it's very hard to do that in a forum. Like you want to see that person one-on-one, they tell you about it. So you could go and beef up those channels that they found you on. And two is building the roadmap based on their experience. Like I have our customers share their screen while we're going through the onboarding. So when I ask them to do something and they're confused, they click around and it's a very clear pattern of where we need to improve. in terms of our UI. So we are completely reconstructed our UI from scratch in our 2.0 version based on because of all the conversations that we've had with our customers. So it makes it a lot simpler to use. So that would probably more than you bargain for. But yeah, that would be the one thing, is the founder being involved in sales and customer success.
Correct me if I'm wrong. It's been a while since I guess we had a call where we did a demo, but I think you actually had the other person share their screen, right? And then click through it. So it's not you sharing things, but actually you would have the other person open up their account and have them do things so you can learn from what they're doing or how they're even looking at your app.
Yeah, so we do that on sales calls too. You're right. And the benefit to that is that when the customers or the prospects in that case are getting to actually experience the product, it makes it very familiar to them. So that when they're on their own doing their own testing, they know where everything exactly is. And another thing is also with Zoom fatigue, people are on calls all day and they lose their interest after 5 minutes. They're checking their phone. I can just see their eyes wandering, or like kids running in the background. So especially if they're working from home, I can see that they have another monitor. But when they're the ones sharing their screen, I have their whole attention for the entirety of the call. So that's also very helpful, so that they're actively involved and engaged in the call.
Nice. If we now surpass 10K monthly recurring revenue, what kind of advice would you give a SaaS founder who's growing to 10 million ARR? So it's a big step. I know you can chop it up, you can do how you want, but what kind of advice would you give here?
We haven't reached that level yet out of Respona, but I have seen it firsthand at Visme, being involved as the first marketing hire there. When it comes to growing that, I think the first million people take it a lot more. They think that it's going to be as hard getting from 1 million to 2 million, and it's never the case. When it comes to your first million is the most difficult one, and then it gets gradually easier over time. And from 9 million to 10 million is almost inevitable if you've built a healthy business. It differs what type of work that you do as a founder. And at the beginning, you're way more involved in the product side of things, in the sales and marketing side of things. And then over time, as you start hiring people and you start delegating a lot of things, then you directing the trajectory of the company. Now you're paying a lot more attention to the metrics and trying to deal a lot more with the data. And you're not quite as hands-on with everything as you used to be, but it makes you do a lot more higher leveraged activities where you can make a decision in a day that would define the trajectory of the company for the next few years, versus at the beginning when you're doing demo calls, not every decision that you make or things that you say are going to have that big of an impact. So that's, again, something that I'm still going through myself. And so by no means I'm a know-it-all. So I'm still learning and making a lot of mistakes, but that's at least observing my co-founder getting to that level. And another thing I found is also you're never going to be happy with the progress. He's as unhappy with everything that I am. Like our level of stress and despair hasn't changed. So that makes me feel like, okay, this is not going to go anywhere. It's not like when you reach a milestone, you're going to be like, oh, I hit 10 million. I'm profitable. Everything's growing so fast. Like, you look at it from the outside, you're like, yeah, you should be like on a boat somewhere. What are you doing here? But it's couldn't be far from reality. Yeah.
Nice. Love it. We're going to wrap things up. I made a lot of notes. I'll see if I can summarize this within 30 seconds. So to start off, you can become a co-founder when working at a corporate, build a tool for yourself, and then actually see if others can benefit from it as well outside your own company. Building a startup backed by a profitable business is great because the basics are being taken care of. You don't have to worry about payroll, but then the downside is expectations are going to be high and on you as a person. So be ready for that. When we look more like Respona, like SEO needs help, so make sure you get relevant backlinks. Talking to customers as a founder keeps you motivated. So if they get value, you will see that your energy rises as well. Don't migrate your clients before your lead engineer goes on holiday without any internet. It's not a good idea. Try different channels, see what is working for you. It can actually only be slow and compounding channels, as Respona did. Make sure you do narrow down your target audience, and ideally leverage other companies to refer you as they see the value you drive for them. And at the beginning, make sure you do sales and onboarding yourself to learn all the challenges, see what is working, and actually have the prospect share his screen so they can't wander off during the call.
Beautiful. That wraps it up nicely.
Nice. Thank you for coming on to the show. If you want to get in contact with you, Farzad, what is the best way?
Sure. My email is farzad@respona.com. That's Farzad. And also I'm on LinkedIn, Farzad Rashidi. Aren't a ton of us out there, so I'm pretty easy to spot.
Yeah, we're going to make sure we add that link so people can't even miss it at all. Thanks for coming on. For people who are listening, we're going to add a poll to this podcast again, so make sure you answer that. And if you haven't given us a review yet, please do so. We can help other SaaS founders out there. Thanks again, Farzad.
I appreciate you having me, Joran. This was fun.
Cheers. Thank you for watching this show of the Grow Your B2B SaaS podcast. You made it till the end, so I think we can assume you like this content. If you did, give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. If you like this content, feel free to reach out if you want to sponsor the show. If you have a specific guest in mind, if you have a specific topic you want us to cover, reach out to me on LinkedIn. More than happy to take a look at it. If you want to know more about Reditus, feel free to reach out as well. But for now, have a great day and good luck growing your B2B SaaS.